Dear friends, this fellow thinks that one of the funniest characters that we ever had a long time ago. Now, I realize that students at the college have never heard of Gracie Allen, George Burns and Gracie Allen. Oh, I think they had some funny things. Of course, they were on movies, but no television. It was radio. All these. I've got a couple of lines of Gracie Allen's in some of the old radio programs I'd just like to share with you because I think it just shows humor in her character. She was not. She was a fine person in real life, but she loved to portray these roles of the gal who was a little less than, shall we say, completely comprehensive about what in the dickens was going on. And just for instance, in one of the programs, she says, I see in the papers that the Los Angeles Police Department are hunting for a Chicago gangster. Yeah, but why should they want one from Chicago? I mean, can't they be satisfied with a hometown boy? Analyze that. And one that's even more far-fetched. She says, well, I do know that shorter cars use much more gasoline. Yeah. With a short car, you have to travel much farther to go the same distance, don't you? That's, well, it was supposed to be funny anyway. Here's a couple more here that from programs. On one occasion, there is a repairman who she's taken her clock for repairs, apparently, and he's checked it over, and he says, Mrs. Burns, there's nothing wrong with your electric clock. You just didn't have it plugged in. She says, well, I don't want to waste electricity. I just plug it in when I want to know what time it is. Yes, well, maybe that makes a teeny bit of sense to somebody. Now then we have two more here that I want to share with you on A While with Lyle today. A neighbor says to Gracie at one point, she says, I've got to go to Sears and Roebuck. We don't have a garbage disposal. And Gracie says, isn't that a long way to take your garbage every day? Take the garbage to Sears and Roebuck. Well, the scripts using George Burns and Gracie Allen, the two of them, the couple, very, very hilarious. And maybe down the road a little bit, I can share with you some of the comments of the two of them. The only one I can think of right now with George Burns, he said when he was, he lived into his 90s, and in those final years, he kept smoking cigars all the time, just smoking cigars. Somebody said, why do you smoke so many cigars? She says, well, George Burns replied, well, at my age, if I don't have something to hold on to, I might fall over. So there he's got it. Well, I have, to bring this little while to a conclusion, I've got the final one here that Gracie said. And I think this is my favorite of Gracie Allen's. She's in a store looking for, apparently, for the new stove range, and the appliance salesman talks to her, and then she responds, this is what you get. The appliance salesman says, oh, you'll like this range, Mrs. Burns. Yes, you'll like this range. For instance, you see, you put in a roast, and you can set the oven control right here, and then you can go out all day. And when you come home at night, the roast is done. Gracie says, why, haven't you got one where I don't have to go out? So be it. Well, we don't have one where I have to shut up too once in a while. That's the While with Lyle for today. Back with you next week. We have a number of different special weeks in the year, don't we? One of them is called the National Right to Read Week, and I think it's important. They probably thought that there were quite a number of us that did know how to read, and that we could trot down to the library and check out 100 pages of prose and ponder a mystery or check up on history or might even look at some pictures. Well, in any event, one of the tribulations these days, of course, is that perhaps not enough of us read really closely. Why? Well, it's too easy to catch a 20-second summary of the news on radio or TV. and you listen with only half interest. You just want to get the key sentence or two. It's too easy to let the commentators tell us everything about, politics, whatever it might be. You always get the 30-second wrap-up of everything. It's all settled that way. I think that we might miss some along the way. A little closer reading and some thinking along the way. A little closer listening and some thinking along the way, too. Many years ago, I just love this. Norman Cousins was editor of the weekly magazine, the Saturday Review. And he had a great device to determine just how many of the magazine's readers were truly reading, yes. He printed letters on the letter to the editor page, which created much interest. Yes, unfortunately. One was an exhortation to write to your congressman. This was a letter to the editor page. Write to your congressman to defeat a terrible bill that's been introduced in the House of Representatives. Yes, the bill, according to the letter writer, would abolish all golf courses in the United States. And its sponsor was Congressman AF Day of California. Now, the writer was K. Jason Sidewell, and he noted that Congressman AF Day's real motive was not the preservation of the environment, no, getting rid of golf courses, no, but revenge. And in this letter to the editor, Sidwell wrote, his grandfather died of apoplexy in a sand trap. Some 30 chip shots, and he never got out. Hence, the hatred of all golf course owners. Well, yes. And some of the readers of the Saturday Review magazine wrote letters to Congress. And there was a golf magazine. I won't give you the specific name of. This is back in the 1970s. I'm telling you about this, but the time. But never forget this, because a golf magazine wrote a scathing editorial urging all of its readers to rise to defeat this awful legislation which would eliminate all golf courses in the United States. That's right. Well, of course, the bottom line on this, of course, was that Congressman AF Day, you see, this was a weekly magazine, and this particular letter to the editor about Congressman AF Day, it was printed on April the 2nd of 1977. And you might ask yourself, so? No, it was April 3rd of 1974 when this particular one was published. I have some other references here on this. But the point is that there was no Congressman AF Day of California. No, AF Day. Eliminating all golf courses, a weekly magazine, and the date on it, April 3rd, April Fool's Day, AF Day. That's as close as they could come to it. Of course, the thing was written by the editor of the magazine just to see if anybody was listening, Norman Cousins, the editor of the magazine, just to see if anybody was really reading, or if it'd been on radio, listening, I suppose. My goodness, to realize that, to recognize, put the clues together, the name of the congressman, and right on the bottom of that same page, the date of the publication, this weekly publication, the Saturday Review. And then you would draw your conclusion, wouldn't you? And that's, of course, what he wanted to do, but very few people did. It wasn't a laugh. No, it was almost a violent response. Well, that's the while with Lyle for right now, but I'll see if I can read a little more and come up with something else later on. Hello. I think you like to have a laugh now and then, don't you? Kind of makes everybody happy when we get some good laughs, give a little moment of intrigue, a little funny awareness. But I wonder, do we know what is funny to just any other person? Imagine you're a writer for a comedian. Your job is to dream up the gags and the witticisms, the comments that'll make your audience laugh and make your boss a much richer person. What's funny? Is this funny? Dean Martin once said, if you drink, don't drive, don't even putt. Is that funny? Is it funny because a well-known person said it? Or is it funny because of the variation of the common phrasing? Or is it funny because it was something totally unexpected? Or is it not funny at all? we wonder about what determines humor for us. Is this funny? The defendant in a court case, have you heard about this one? The defendant in the court case was deaf. Yeah, he was deaf, but the fellow was released automatically. You know why, of course, don't you? There could be no conviction without a hearing. Is that funny? I can chuckle over it. Perhaps others can too, but would those with impaired hearing, would they laugh at it? Well, we have to see there's a fine line sometimes between hilarity on one hand and insult on the other. Yes, and I must confess, sometimes in the classroom at Mount Union when I was in the English department there, I would come up with something and I thought was pretty funny, and nobody laughed. I remember one time we were talking about emphasis in sentence structure, and I just made reference to something that Gertrude Steinway once said. She said, "A piano is a piano is a piano." Well, was that funny? Well, if you haven't read any of the works of Gertrude Steinway, it's Gertrude Stein, of course. Steinway is the name. Yes, I don't want to explain everything. But Gertrude Stein did write that way with a great deal of repetitive emphasis, you might say. But the question is that funny if we don't understand it, if we have not heard, shall we say, the original? Well, might get into a situation there. Now, funny material, of course, I think the good funny material is that which is true, which actually happened, and which is not entirely planned. I'm thinking of, this is supposed to be true, the little boy who lost one tooth, and then a second fell out after he had bumped his head, and he ran into the house, and he said, "Mommy, Mommy, if this keeps up, my mouth will be bald." Love that word. Boy, that's good poetry right there. Sure it is. I think so. What's funny? Is this funny? This goes back more than 100 years ago. Humorist Josh Billings once said, "Waiting to be whipped, that's the most uninteresting period in a boy's life." Now see, that was meant to be funny. But what's the background that we bring to the hearing of that might find out whether it might be nothing? Immanuel Kant once said that the cause of laughter, he put it this way, it's the sudden transformation of a strained expectation into nothing. See? It stems from the ironic emptiness, where we expected to get something that was very wise or very important. I'm going to conclude this little while with a reference. Is this one here now? An ironic emptiness that we thought was going to be a depth of wisdom. Does this make it funny? The story of the man who ordered a very special cake from the bakery. He had special words formed in the icing. He ordered this. And 3 days later, he came back to pick up the order. He was absolutely disappointed with the baker's workmanship. He said, "I can't buy this one. I wanted script letters on the cake. That's so very important." Well, the baker realized the effort was to no avail. He promised to have the beautiful script lettering, though, on the next cake, and he would have it ready in 6 hours. Well, the customer later that day returned. And this time the lettering was just right on the cake. Oh, it was just fine. It was no longer the block lettering, but now beautiful script. And he said to the baker, "Oh, that's good. Thank you." And the baker said to him, "Oh, good. Now, shall we send the cake to your house?" And the customer said, "Oh, no. Just give me a knife and fork. I'll just eat it right here." Is that funny? In light of the previous ad? Well, you got to think about that, don't you? Humor is very important. Yes, it's important in the classroom. It's important out of the classroom. And you need to think about what constitutes the humor. I think we can learn a great deal by being aware of what constitutes it. Let's put it that way. And so maybe we'll have another laugh when I'm back with you next week. Well, have you ever wondered about the role of a little bit of humility in our lives? I never fully appreciated the meaning of humility until one time when I was teaching here at Mount Union. A student put me in my place this one day. He failed to show up. When he came the next day to class, I said to him, "You missed my class yesterday." He said, "No, not at all." That's when the precise moment I began to learn something about what I shall call academic humility. Yes. Dictionary defines humility as the absence of pride, but it also notes that humility is the modest or lowly. Yes, that could be too. In all of my shall we say, humble experiences, and certainly I've had plenty of them, there's no question about that. But I think of something that I thought was very, very important. I did a lot of freelance writing in my earlier years, and I used that experience in teaching writing in my classes here. We would want to have good opening paragraphs, get the reader's attention. We'd want to have a stylistic approach that would be consistent throughout the theme and all sorts of considerations. Well, I had an idea one time for, I guess it's when I was thinking I could be another Ernest Hemingway. I was doing a great deal of writing and getting it published. But then I had a humble experience. See, I had an idea one day for a family magazine article discussing Easter traditions, including the fact that the date of this significant Christian day is determined by the position of the full moon. And how was I going to get started with such an article that would bring out this rather unknown or not always involved, let's say, in discussions aspect of the date of Easter? How am I going to get the editor's attention so that this would really be an article that would sell? I decided to use a catchy question. That's right. And so as I prepared the article, it was about a 4-page article altogether, I began by saying, "Have you ever wondered how the Easter Bunny knows when to make its annual trip?" The article ran over 2,000 words, and I sent it off to an editor in New York City. Oh, I was awaiting a sure acceptance and a very nice check from them. Instead, I learned a lesson in the art of how to start articles which editors will not buy. That's right. Remember what I said in that first paragraph? Have you ever wondered how the Easter Bunny knows when to make its annual trip? In the margin of that neatly typed page with big fat pencil, the editor had written, "No." No, he never wondered about it. Therefore, there's no need for him to keep on reading it. I mentioned that to my students one time, that experience. One person turned in the next paper that said, "Have you ever wondered how I received a grade of A on this theme?" Well, I must confess I did wonder about it. That's why I had to keep on reading it. But he was far ahead of me. I was the one who'd been humbled by a bad opening paragraph, not him. Well, that's it for now. We'll be back with you next week with another While with Lyle.